Very frequently, the families that I've supported, the children don't want to speak to their peers about what's going on and actually start to withdraw themselves from their peers, particularly like sleepovers, play dates, etc. Often a person that has this going on within their household, whether that's dementia or another long-term condition, they're reluctant to engage with that because they don't want people to come back to the house to see what's going on.
Welcome to My Life with Dementia, a podcast from Dementia UK. I'm Kula Bikini. I'm here because in 2023, I lost my dad to vascular dementia. And now I want to help other families who are going through something similar. Admiral Nurses are specialist dementia nurses who give families the space to talk to someone who understands. No question is too big or small. In this episode, two Admiral Nurses, Hilda and Vic, are sharing their practical advice and insights on themes from Chloe and Amy's story. If you want to listen to Chloe and Amy's episode first, you'll find it right next to this one in your podcast feed. You'll hear Hilda and Vic explore things like how schools can support young carers, the importance of counselling to help manage the emotional strain of looking after someone with dementia, and how Admiral Nurses can help families prepare for the future with advanced care planning, including lasting power of attorney. If you'd like to speak to an Admiral Nurse, you can pause this episode at any time and follow the link in the show description to find out more.
My name is Hilda Hayo and I'm the Chief Admiral Nurse and CEO of Dementia UK.
And my name is Vic Lyons. I'm one of the Admiral Nurses at Dementia UK.
We're now going to be talking about Chloe and Amy and their experience of a mother who had young onset dementia. One thing in particular that Chloe and Amy were talking about is in the early stages with their mum, she started to get fixation on certain things. And one thing in particular that was mentioned was the jelly.
Yeah.
It's not unusual for people with dementia, particularly if it's affecting certain parts of their brain, to have a fixation on something. So it might be food, it might be routines, doing things at a certain time or going to certain places, saying certain things, changing appetite, changing in what it is that they prefer to eat. Those are the sorts of things that can happen in some forms of dementia.
Sometimes with food as well, it's the different textures, it's the tastes, it's how they feel in your mouth and how easy they are to eat. So things like meat, for example, often become something they don't want to eat, or somebody wants more sweet things rather than savoury things, because let's face it, sweet things are nicer to eat. So, there could be an element of that too.
Absolutely.
What really struck me about this story was actually how young Chloe and Amy were. You're juggling school and work and family life and actually what you expect mum to be able to do. So it really highlighted for me what it is to be a young carer, the impact that this might have on somebody, even if I know we'll get onto it later, but the rapid progression, the shock around someone's death, but just actually getting that diagnosis whilst you are still young. And we know there's hundreds of children, there's hundreds of young carers who are out there now, and again they can often be hidden. There's people who are supporting parents, but also grandparents, and all sorts of other illnesses as well, not just dementia. And young carers even do not always identify themselves as carers. Actually going into a school environment and saying I'm a carer is something they really don't often want to do because it's kind of alien. It's my mum, of course I'm going to help. It's it's just part of life that they absorb, because you're still very much in that formative stage, aren't you, of just working out who you are and what your life might be.
You notice that a lot with families that have got younger children. My specialism is working with people with young onset dementia. So I saw a lot of very young families, and very frequently the children wouldn't talk about their feelings and what was happening for them with their parents. Because they didn't want to burden them and didn't want to upset them. So often they didn't have anywhere to actually go to.
Yeah, nowhere to take it. Or even the language for it as well. If I think about my teenage children, when they're upset, they don't always articulate what they're upset about. Right. But I know they're upset because they're, kicking the door or whatever,
Yes.
they're playing their music loud.
Yeah.
There's other ways that you pick up, actually, this is causing some upset for this child. It's not usually they're going to come and say, I'm actually really upset about X. It's kind of the behaviour comes out in a different way.
It does. It comes out in a different way, or the person withdraws. So the children withdraw. And that's really important for speaking with the school, particularly if you've got a school-aged child. And I'm really pleased to see that actually happened in this case. And when you speak to a school, a really good school will be able to give you that extra wraparound support whilst you're at school. So you get the best time that you can at school, but also so you can be offered counselling and support, which was taken up and obviously made an awful lot of difference within this family.
There's so much school can do, isn't there? There's loads. And especially, again, nowadays, schools have got pastoral care, they've got flexibility, they've got children in schools with all sorts of different needs within that school system. And, they want to make that school experience the best that they can for the children who are in their care. So they've got better understanding in how to support these young people. So actually having that conversation and saying this is what we're living with as a family and bringing it into that environment so the school understand, rather than thinking, well, this child's late again, or they haven't got dinner money, or they're distracted, or they're not doing very well, their grades are slipping. If they understand, they can make the adjustments and actually support that child. It might not be that the young person goes and has a conversation with their peers about what's going on, because they might want school to be normal. Yes. Children don't like to stand out at school, do they? They like to be, I'm one of the crowd. But actually, if the school know, they can provide that flexibility and that support in a gentle, soft way to support that young person throughout their school career.
You have a good point about the peers. Very frequently, the families that I've supported, the children don't want to speak to their peers about what's going on, and actually start to withdraw themselves from their peers, particularly like sleepovers, play dates, etc. Often a person that has this going on within their household, whether that's dementia or another long-term condition, they're reluctant to engage with that because they don't want people to come back to the house to see what's going on. So they get further social isolation, which is really upsetting.
And of course, if they're caring for somebody, they might not be able to do these things anyway, because if you're at whatever age you are, if you've got to get back home because you've got to make a meal or give somebody medication, or somebody can't be left alone because paid carers have gone, or whatever that situation is, you are going to miss out on some of the things that a young person without caring responsibilities would just take for granted. So it's that difficult balancing act, isn't it? Chloe and Amy spoke about that, trying to work, trying to study, trying to care around the clock and provide that support whilst still working out who they are as people and what they want to be, and the things that are important for them. And they spoke quite a lot about teamwork, and that kind of sustained them because they'd got each other.
Absolutely. And what was interesting, I thought, Chloe and Amy both said the same thing, that they felt like they were giving something back to mum because she'd always given to them. So I thought that was a really nice way of looking at things. But it comes back to what you said before. They didn't say because we were carers.
It's because she's mum.
I'm doing that because it's my mum.
It's so true, isn't it? And then you start thinking about the whole emotional side of this, and actually what does that look like when you're this young and you're carrying this much emotion, this sense of role reversal, and then you get this sense of why me, why mum, why us, that can creep in, and that's quite normal because it is unusual. It's rare to have a diagnosis at the age that Sarah was. So I think you can't look to your peers and think, oh, well, they're going through it as well, because the chances are
probably not.
They're not.
No, absolutely. And I think the conversations that they had around, for instance, do not resuscitate and a kind of lasting power of attorney, and actually looking at advanced plans. What is it that's going to be best for mum? That's a very difficult conversation to have when you're a child or a young adult. It's a difficult conversation to have when you're 70s, 80s, 90s, let alone at that age group. And that responsibility must have been really difficult for them to be able to cope with at the time.
It would have been,
but they
for
did
sure.
it fantastically from what we heard. when you get to the situation, when you're starting to talk about advanced planning, what should we do when? Those are the sorts of things that's really important to talk through with an Admiral nurse. You can either do that on the helpline, you can do that in a clinic, or you can kind of get the skills of one of our specialist young onset nurses. We've developed some special services and support for people that are living with these conditions. So we've got a consultant nurse for young onset dementia, but we've also got a consultant nurse that deals with all of the complexities that can happen with children and young adults as well. Because we don't know how many people are supporting their parents living with dementia.
Yeah.
We simply don't know those figures. Yeah. There are a lot, I know, because I know the county that I was working in, we had a lot of under 16-year-olds that we were supporting. But they need support in a different way. Mm-hmm. The conventional services won't necessarily be able to do that in the same way as you can if you're actually specialising in it.
And I think there was something for me as well in terms of the support, is the support that they provided each other.
I think you made a good point earlier where you've got another brother, sister that can be of a support. That is fantastic. But so frequently I've come across situations where there's only one child and that one child carries the whole burden. Yeah. And I think that can be incredibly difficult. And you do need specialist support for that.
That's where the Admiral Nurses and other services, whatever they may be in the area, come in, so that you've got somebody who you can talk to and you can get that support, so you're not on your own. And the other thing that came through in this story was about the sudden death that Sarah had, and obviously which wasn't actually caused by her dementia. It was something else that caused this. It was a brain hemorrhage, wasn't it? And that for families often feels a sense of shock, that almost this sense of disorientation, because you've kind of got this idea about where things are going, and then something suddenly sort of curveballs you, and you didn't see it coming, and this feeling of almost kind of collapse, because you've been on autopilot for so long. You've been so busy. You've been in this caring role, giving as much as you've been giving, and you suddenly without this caring role, and this sort of loss of purpose, this sudden readjustment, and having to get back to, Amy actually described it, didn't she, as going from full-time caring to nothing overnight. And that's something carers tell us all the time. It's been so consuming that, the person suddenly died, and how do you pick up your life again at that point?
I think that one of the issues that came out of there as well is, and often I've seen this in my practice, is when you've got somebody that's going into respite and something awful happens, like the person dies or they have to break a leg or something happens that's awful, and you feel such guilt. You think, oh, probably I shouldn't have done that. Yeah. I shouldn't have let them go there. I was enjoying myself, and look what happened whilst I was enjoying myself. So very often you need some counselling to enable you to get through that, because those guilt feelings can be really quite strong.
I think you've hit it on the head there with that counselling, because, when you lose somebody suddenly through anything, you may need counselling. But especially if you have been a carer, because you've got that sudden loss, you've got that sudden loss of, this is who I am, this is my role, this is my identity, and you've carried so much that, I've worked with many carers who describe something that's almost sort of akin to kind of PTSD at the end of their caring, because you've held so much and you've had to keep going, and almost like the adrenaline of it all keeps you going, and you can't get off, because it's you can't just stop. It is quite common that the impact of that, what you've been doing, really hits you once the person is no longer with you and they've died. And then I think there's something about those kind of missed milestones as well. And, and these girls are going to feel that going forward, aren't they? The 21st birthday, the weddings, the first children, all of the things that you would ordinarily look to your mum to experience with you, or to give you guidance and support, and wanting mum to be present.
But what came across really clearly was that Chloe and Amy have got a really strong relationship, and I would think that those two together will be quite a force going forward, and they will support each other. And I think the difference in age group, I think, made a difference as well, because in effect, a person that's got kind of losing a mother figure quite early on, one of the other siblings will adopt that mother figure role. And so it's not always the oldest child, interestingly. It can be either or. So, yeah, I think that, there'll be good, strong support for each other in the future.
They will. And these early experiences that they've had are going to shape their identities forever, aren't they? They're going to always carry this with them. And that connection, I would imagine, that sense of we've lived through this together, we've done this together, we've learned. And the resilience that you see in young carers is amazing, truthfully. They're resilient, they're resourceful, they're often quietly brilliant.
If you'd like to speak to an Admiral nurse like Hilda or Vic yourself, you can contact Dementia UK's helpline. Just click on the link in the show description or visit dementiauk.org. The helpline is open every day of the year, except for the 25th of December. This has been an episode of My Life with Dementia, a podcast from Dementia UK. Please subscribe in your podcast app to get new episodes as soon as they come out. And if you've enjoyed this episode, why not share it with someone you think might find it useful? You can take a look at the show notes for a link to our support services, which include online resources, ways to contact Dementia UK helpline, and information about Admiral Nurse clinics. Thank you so much for listening.